Okay, so we're going to take a look at a demonstration of the proof of concept for our developer audience right now for what we've created. Basically are some tasks, pretty much driven from the exam design that we created for our web application developers. So the tasks that you'll see here are similar to what you would find on the current multiple choice style questions that exist in our 70-515 web application developer for .NET 4. So we use those as a starting point to develop the exam and come up with concepts that we could use for testing candidates' ability to work with this platform here. So this becomes a performance-based testing platform. And what you're currently looking at right now may not exist in the final version of this when we go to market with it. This is simply a proof of concept. You can consider this Alpha 1, Beta 1, whatever you want to call it. And it's designed to give you an idea of what we expect a candidate would see when they sit down to take performance-based tests for the developers, and to give us feedback on it. And we're looking for areas to improve on, things that kind of make sense or don't make sense from your perspective as developers. And so what I'm going to do is I'll basically step through the first 4 tasks that we have here. And this will give you an idea of kind of what the experience for the candidate will be like, and give you the opportunity to see, how it's going to look from the candidate's perspective. And once again, we're looking for feedback on kind of the interface, some of the tasks that we're doing, if you think it makes sense to, to test these kind of tasks in this manner and in this form factor. So taking a look at what we have available here, once again, this interface may change a little bit from what you see in terms of a hosting platform or what might be available. But on the left-hand side, what we're seeing here is a Windows 7 desktop, and this is actually running on a virtual machine. So not a simulated environment. If you're familiar with some of the previous SQL Server exams that we did in a simulated environment where your paths were kind of restricted in what you could do, this is basically designed to provide the candidate sitting for the exam an environment that's similar to what they would find at their desktop sitting back at work. So again, it's a full virtual machine running Windows 7, has Visual Studio 2010 installed. I did a little quick check on this one before I started the demo and noticed that the local copy of MSDN, I couldn't verify if it was installed, but on the end product you would actually have the local copy of MSDN installed so that the candidate can do some quick research within the MSDN library itself. Now obviously the end product when it's delivered will not have internet access. That's for security purposes. We don't want anybody on instant message with their buddy getting the answers to how to perform something, but we do want to make the environment as close as possible to what a candidate would have in the real world. So again, on the left-hand side, virtual machine is running here. If we had multiple virtual machines, and for most typical developer tasks, it wouldn't be necessary, but you would be able to choose, whichever virtual machine you needed to work on based on a task from this menu here. You'll also have the opportunity to switch resolutions. Again, this may depend entirely on the testing center capabilities of hardware as to what's available, but some people may decide that they need to have a little bit bigger resolution for what they're working on. In the right-hand side are basically the task pane. So this will present a scenario. This one's currently missing the overall scenario for what would provide the background of what the candidate is looking at here. And essentially it would explain to them, you're developing a web application. It consists of, X number of pages, and the whole purpose behind it is whatever the scenario would present to them. And it gives them some background as to why they would be performing the tasks that you actually see here. So again, the tasks are, split up. Relatively easy to look at. There's not a lot of information in the task in terms of how to complete it because that's not the goal. We're not trying to be prescriptive in how the candidate performs the specific task. What we are looking for is essentially the end goal. So the task simply tells the candidate to perform something within the web application itself, and they can choose to do it however they see fit, whether they want to put set the properties in the properties panel, that's perfectly fine, or if they prefer to do it from within the code window, that's perfectly fine as well. We're only going to really test the end result. So, this is where the task pane will tell them what it is that we expect them to accomplish as a part of this specific scenario. Now, you'll notice that on the desktop for our virtual machine, we have it split up into tasks 1 to 4, tasks 5 to 7, and tasks 8 to 10. Again, this is some of our preliminary thoughts in that we would give the candidates groupings of tasks that would allow them to complete certain aspects of it without interfering with the entire project. So we don't want to give them 10 tasks and have them, sit there and go through the entire 10 tasks and then have the whole project not build at the end and create all kinds of issues or problems and, result in a failure where it shouldn't. So, each individual grouping of tasks can be scored as a group, and it gives a candidate a much better opportunity to, pass on partial completion of a solution or what have you. So the tasks will be, again, numbered on the right-hand pane, and they'll be basically, mapped to the appropriate task folder on the left-hand pane. One thing I did forget to mention, too, is up here on the top of the screen, we see the time remaining. This will let the candidate know how much time they basically have left in the entire lab. So the individual tasks will not be scored, not timed. If you're familiar with some of the previous ones, like the old 70-300, where you had specific sections to complete within a certain time frame, and even some of our upgrades, this is not how this one will actually be scored, at least initially, from what we're looking at. So total time, again, usually a seat time is about 2 hours for an exam. We fully expect that to remain the same for these ones here, which means that the tasks have to be designed so that a qualified candidate would be able to complete the tasks in the allotted time. So 2 hours would not be the total time allotted to the exam. We have to take out time allotted for surveys at the beginning if the candidate wants to go through the process of a demo of how this works, and then any comment period at the end. So without further ado, let's step right into stepping through some of the tasks and taking a look at what a candidate would see, kind of what the experience would be like for them as they go through the process of working with this lab. So we're going to do tasks 1 to 4, so I'll pop open that folder first and gain access to the Visual Studio solution. And again, to try to keep the time, from taking the candidates a long time to complete, we're not expecting them to develop everything from scratch. We do provide starter code. We do provide, proxy stubs and different application pieces where it makes sense so that it saves the candidate a certain amount of time. So as you can see, what we've got here is Visual Studio. So this is version 2010, which is what the exam will be based on. So the candidate will be able to work within the full version of Visual Studio. It's not crippled in any way. There's no background flash, Silverlight, or anything running here to make this look pretty. This is the actual product running on a virtual machine. So the first thing that we're asked to do here in task number 1, it basically tells us that we have a products.aspx page, our standard ASP.NET page that we have ready for deployment. And it's requiring a query string parameter called product category ID. And what we want the candidate to do is to enable client-side caching with a duration of 60 seconds. And it has to take place for each product category within the products.aspx page. So again, it's just a generic scenario. Somebody may come to the candidate, on the job and say, here's what I need you to do, and nobody's going to, direct you on how to do it or give you step-by-step instructions. So the candidate is going to have to come in and complete that. So let's go in and take a look at doing task number 1. You can see from what we've got available here, little padlocks that are next to pretty much all of our files here, which means that they are under source control. So the candidate will have to do a checkout for edit so before they can actually make any changes that will be saved to the file itself. So we'll go through the process of checking out task 1, which is our products.aspx page. And the important thing to note here as well is that not only did we do the checkout for products.aspx, but both of our code behind files have also been checked out for edit as well. Once again, we're not trying to restrict the candidate in where they can go ahead and set the properties or do the necessary coding or whatever they need to accomplish the task. They can go ahead and put it in whichever particular place it is that they feel most comfortable with or that they've had the most experience with. So let's pop open products.aspx and see what it is that the candidate will have the ability to work with in the product. So in the real life, real world scenario, candidates actually have IntelliSense built into Visual Studio. We've had some complaints, in the past. Some of our questions on the exams were kind of recall in terms of what's available for namespaces or class properties or methods. And candidates go, IntelliSense is here. Why do I have to remember that? Why do I have to know that? So this is, designed to kind of help overcome some of those issues where, the candidate is looking for IntelliSense. That's what you're used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and this will actually bring that IntelliSense here for you. So let's go ahead and add the necessary page directive code that we want in here so that we can get, what the candidate is required to do in this case, which is to set up the client-side caching. So as you can see, full IntelliSense, again, because this is the Visual Studio environment, it's in a VM, there's nothing simulated here. And we're going to go ahead and put this information in. We said that we wanted to make sure that it was based on each product category. So what we want to do is do a vary by param, so it'll be the parameters that we're looking for specifically. You'll notice a little bit of lag in here. Part of it is, running in the VM environment. Part of it is because it's running across an internet connection right now, and the other part of it too is because we're running from live meeting. These are things that we look for, to make sure that the candidate gets a good experience in the end when we go through the process of dealing with this. In a release product, we want to make sure that performance is good. Obviously, in a virtual machine, it's not going to be exactly the same as it would be on a standalone, workstation environment, but should still be, appropriate for working within an exam environment. So we said we wanted to vary it by the parameter, which was product category ID, and we wanted our duration to be 60 seconds. So we will go ahead and input the necessary parameters for that. So duration equals 60 seconds, and then that's basically all that we have to do for task number 1. Now, if the candidate is familiar with dealing with HTTP headers and how they can go ahead and inspect those, they can do a quick little check to make sure that it's okay. Qualified candidates should look at that and know, yeah, this is what I need to do. So I'm happy with this, and everything appears to be working perfectly fine. So we've completed task number 1. When the candidate is finished, basically what they'll want to do is a save all. Again, they can do a build. They can run this to make sure that it's achieving the stated goal. And then when they're completed, we'll just right-click and do a check-in. So we're finished with that code. And then it will be ready for our scoring engine in the background once we end the session.